Today we're going to be starting the painting of this beautiful rose together. We're going to start with the warm colors first. So today we're going to be adding in some beautiful, warm, soft pinks, as well as some richer, deep, warm reds. And we're going to be able to create a lot of drama just with values and changing how much water we're applying to our paint. This is going to lay an amazing foundation for our upcoming lessons in cool shadows and the background and leaves. Welcome back to Sunlit Brushstrokes. My name's Jessica and I'm so glad you've joined me today as we begin this painting of our rose. This is going to be at least a 4-part series. I'm going to be starting today with our warm undertones, and we're going to then eventually build into adding some cool shadows in a future lesson, doing some leaves, and then finally an abstract background. This is the project that I did start using Van Gogh. And if you've watched my last video, you'll know I've kind of changed my tune on that. But because I started with it, I carry on using that till the very end. But you're definitely welcome to use a better quality paint. Any artists or professional grade watercolor paint would be great. M. Graham is my personal recommendation, but whatever works for you. And so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I've gone ahead and transferred the rose onto a piece of cold press watercolor paper. I've trimmed it down to a 5x7 size. I find that's a really nice size for both a card or a small little piece of artwork that you could frame. For example, I've done that size on a card here and given it to my mom as a gift, or a card. And I've also gone ahead and done this size and placed it in a small frame. This is a 5x7 frame, and it makes a cute little gift as well. Now, the inspiration for this piece is actually a couple larger paintings I did many years ago. This one, I don't care for the leaves so much, but I do like the rose itself. I feel it's got some really beautiful color as far as building up from warm to cool tones, as we talked about when we did our color wheel. And so I'm wanting to focus on that with this project. I've also done it with a even larger piece where I've kind of cropped it and just done a really close up of this rose. So I thought this is a really good painting to practice the concepts that we've been talking about already. If you want to follow along with the exact rose outline that I've used, you can purchase this on my Etsy shop. It's a printable download. How it works is you'll get the PDF, you can print it on your home printer immediately and go ahead and transfer this onto watercolor paper using the techniques I showed you in a previous video. I'll put a link to that below. And there's a 5x7 and there's an 8x10 because some people might prefer larger shapes to work with. So you could do an 8x10 size if you prefer. But yeah, those are both available for purchase in a single set. One change I did make to this compared to my image is that I made a wider stem for the rose because I realized that the one I had was probably much too skinny. And then I removed that leaf that throughout the video I'm going to kind of comment on the fact I don't like it. I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna not even draw it on the outline. Otherwise, you'll be able to have the same image that I'm using. So to get started here today, I've got a new palette here with some of my 3 primary colors of paint. Again, I'm using Van Gogh. So this is our transparent yellow medium, quinacridone rose, and phthalo blue. And I've got a variety of these round Simply Simon's brushes. I'll probably mainly work with a couple of number 8s, and I've actually got a new number 6 that I'm going to try out. I think it might be helpful for working in these tiny little shapes that are inside the center of this rose. So I've got a variety, but you can just use what you have. Just be aware you may want something a bit smaller than a number 8. And as I've said before, when you transfer this, you can go ahead and use a kneaded or kneadable eraser and remove any graphite smudges from the transfer process and lighten your lines, your outlines, to be as light as you can comfortably work with, because once you apply water to this, these lines become permanent. I personally like working lighter than this, but I will work with this today just because I feel like it will hopefully be visible for all of you watching. This project will probably take a few lessons to finish. We're going to start with our warm tones, as we talked about before. I really like getting the warmer colors on first. And Definitely I like getting the yellow on because it just doesn't lay as nicely as a pigment on top of other colors. It tends to work the best as in the base layers. But we're also going to be working with a warm palette today because the local color or the main color of this flower is going to be a color somewhere in here. It's not going to be quite as pink as this, but it's not going to be as orange as this. And we're going to build up our layers working within a color within this area. So it's going to be not quite monochromatic because we are putting some yellow under first, but most of today's lesson is going to just involve using a color within this range that we'll mix up together. Let's go ahead and apply our yellow paint first. I am seeing yellow, some yellow undertones in a few of these different places on here, kind of within this section of the flower and kind of comes out into here. I do have a reference photo, and so I'm going to just work with that for today. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply some yellow, but first we'll put water down so that the yellow can kind of move around. I'm just trying to figure out where I need it. So I'm not applying it in too many places. Maybe I'll just put a little bit of water up here. I'm not going to put much yellow up here. I really don't want much, but just to kind of harmonize our yellows a little bit, I might put a little bit of yellow in these other places. We'll see. Okay, let's go ahead and get our yellow on our brush. Don't want too much, but let's go ahead and this is an interesting shape actually right here because it actually is a little bit of a green color, which is a little bit different, but there's a lot of yellow at almost at the base or kind of closest to the stem, kind of at the very center of the flower. There's more of a yellow color and even a little bit green. And the only place the green really shows is going to be in this section here. Most of the time, it's going to be more of a bit of a yellow undertone glow in this. So I'm just dropping just a little bit of yellow and trying to figure out where all I need it. I'm going to put a little bit here and some under here. I don't want too much in this section. It's okay if a little bit bleeds into there, but for the most part, I'm kind of just aiming for in here with the intense yellow. And then maybe I'll add water to my brush. Just take most of the paint and the water off of it. And just every now and then drop a teeny weeny little bit of yellow into our flower. Don't want too much. Maybe drop a little bit in here too. Washing my brush off. I think that's probably enough. I don't want to overdo the yellow. It's I want it to be I want it to have a slight warm glow, but I don't want to overdo. So I think I'm just going to call that good for now. Actually, we can also add a little bit of yellow to our buds. So let's just do that really quick. And again, I'm going to just put it kind of at the base of the buds. I really don't like how much pencil's on here. It's making things look a little gray. So if you can get more pencil off of yours and still be comfortable to work, do so. Because this yellow, because this graphite just, I don't know. I don't care as much when it mixes with the water. And I'm going to let it dry. All right, so once your work is dry, you can either have used a hair dryer or let it air dry. We're going to want to make ourselves a warm pink color. Now by warm, again, I'm going to grab my color wheel. We talked about the warm colors and our warmest color is orange. So if we're just using the straight quinacridone rose, we would get a very, very pinky color. But I want to get it just a smidgen closer to the orange. And by getting that smidgen closer to the orange, it's going to warm it up. So I want something, I would say a pink somewhere between these two, because I don't want it to be that orange, but I want something that's just a touch more on that side. So let's go ahead and mix up a color that will be kind of a little bit warmer than just the quinacridone rose as it is. Maybe we'll do it up here. Let's just grab some of our yellow. Now I do have water in the palette, obviously, in addition to the paint. So I'll probably make something that's kind of concentrated, and then I can kind of just vary how much of it I need, and I'll also be wetting this. So we should be okay with this being quite concentrated. So I'm just going to wash my brush off quick here and grab some of our quinacridone rose, mix it into our yellow. I might have grabbed more yellow than I'm going to need. We'll see. I might need a lot of rose to get this. Ooh, yeah, I will need a lot of rose to get this rosy enough. I might even, sometimes when I make a bad decision like that and I've like put way too much of maybe yellow to start with, I might leave some of that alone and then just kind of start another mixture with part of it. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just thinking I put quite a lot of yellow to start with. I can always use this later if I need to expand my mixture a bit. So I'm putting quite a bit of this quinacridone rose to try and get it back to where I want it. Almost cleaning my palette out. All right, let's see if this is a good color. I have a feeling, yeah, I have a feeling that's a bit, just a little bit warm still. I think I want a little bit more rose. So I will just squirt a little bit more into my palette here. And just go ahead and mix some more of that pink into there. Definitely went overboard with that yellow at the beginning, but I think this might be, it's not bad. I might go with that color. Let's just see when we add more water to it what color it looks like. I might want it a little more pinky, but I don't know. Let's just water it down a little bit. No, actually I kind of think that's probably good. If I find that I need a little bit more, I can, but I do want it to be kind of, like I said, a warm pink. So it's more on the warm pink side. So I'm going to go with that. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and start laying this color down. Now what I might do, just so you can see where I'm applying the water, usually I would use clear water, but you can use your dirty paint water as well to lay this color down if you're okay with having a little bit of your, say, pink on your paper. I figure if I use water that's kind of slightly painty, which I have some in one of my water jars here, it will allow you to see where I'm applying the water easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do one petal at a time. I'm going to wet it and apply some of my color, that the warm rosy color we got mixed up there. So I'm just going to work my way around. So just get the water on there. I might do it on a couple petals to start with, and then I can come back around and fill in the ones that I haven't done. Now, I don't like doing petals that are touching each other. I know we talked about this with our purple tulip, but if you wet the petals that are touching each other, the water will just bleed in from one petal to the next, and you'll end up with no difference between the petals. Now, I'm picking just clean water for this part because I don't really want to turn that yellow to pink, because like I said, it does have a green undertone. We'll talk about that later. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a little bit of our color here and apply it along the edges, kind of this inside edge of each of these petals. So just kind of dropping it in, and then I'll maybe use a wet brush to just kind of move it a little bit where I want it to go. I'm not creating a lot of detail here. I'm just applying just enough to kind of move things around. Okay, I'm probably going to have a lot more dark in the center. Well, I will have a more dark in the center, but I also want the outside petals to be quite soft and light. And a lot of our interest is going to be created by having so many petals in the middle of this flower. We don't want to spend a lot of time trying to get a lot of detail on these outside petals. So let's get some under here. A bit much on my brush, so I just dabbed it off there on the paper towel. I think that's okay. So what I'm going to do while I've got this paint here is I'm just going to try and gently work my way into the center. I know it's a little bit more challenging because these are wet, but I'm going to see how many petals I can get painted without having them, like I say, bleeding into each other. This Like this one here, it doesn't touch anything, so I could do it. Or this one here, it's not touching anything, so I could do it. I might go ahead and do some of these lighter folded over petals that are in the middle. So I'll just go ahead and wet and then dab it with a little bit of the darker paint. So let's just do that. Let's go into here. I think I can do this one here. It's not touching anything. And again, you can use clear water, or I think these, because these petals have a little bit of pink on them already, it's okay if you want to use your slightly pinky paint water. You may not have such dark paint water already. I happen to, because I had quite a bit of paint I ended up washing off with my brush, which I don't typically like to do, but that is the way it worked today for me. Okay, I think I want to lift a little bit. I don't want as much right here. Just made my brush kind of thirsty by dabbing it on the paper towel. I didn't actually clean it. I just made it thirsty. So sometimes I talk about a clean, thirsty brush. It means you wash your brush first, then you dab it off. This time all I did is just dabbed it, so it didn't have quite as much water and paint on it. Okay, where's another good petal for me to work? These ones are actually touching each other right here, but I am going to do it as one petal to start with, and then I will break it apart when I add my shadows. So I'm just going to go ahead and just get that in there. Anywhere where the pink isn't super light in the center, I might just go ahead and get a coat on it. Let's do that. That'll speed up our process a little bit. I decided let's just go ahead and fill this center part in, because for the most part these are going to be fairly dark, even the light sections of them. So we'll just speed up the process by, yes, doing petals that are touching each other here in this case, because we're going to be creating the depth with another layer. So I'll even put a little bit of water here. This I have to be careful with because the top of this petal does get a lot lighter, so I don't want to overdo the pink here, but I can put some. I'm just going to use a little bit of my paint water to fill this one. This one here is actually quite light, so I don't want to get it too intense. So again, I'm barely getting pink on some of these. Maybe what I'll do while this is starting to dry is I'll come in and I'll do the buds quickly, and then I will have to grab the hair dryer. So just go in and just get some water on our buds. Again, I'm using my painty water. And I'm gonna just put a little bit of this paint. I'll probably put a good blob of it at the top and let it kind of bleed down, and I'll get more detail on these little buds later. So. Okay, I'm just going to leave them like that in case they're going to need another layer on top, but I'm just going to let this dry. So I will grab the hair dryer and I will be back. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and basically repeat these steps that we just did, but we're going to do it on the petals that we haven't yet done. So because things are dry, and again, to know if something's dry, you can always like use the back of your hand and just see if there's any dampness. If there's not any damp or coolness, it actually, if it's cool, it's damp. If it feels cool, then just give it a little more time with the hair dryer. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and just fill these other petals in now. So I'm going to do this. stirring my paint up quick because it almost, sometimes the paint can settle, and I'm almost wondering if that's what was going on. When I was painting the buds, I was surprised that they were as warm toned as they were. So I'm just, sometimes the heavier pigments settle. Usually I don't find that with quinacridone rose, but let's see, it might be, yeah, it feels like it's more pink. I'm almost too concentrated on my brush, so I'll have to definitely blend this around pretty quickly with some fresh water. And I'm getting darker, and I don't mind the fact that I'm a bit darker in this petal compared to the ones that are kind of directly above it, because this one is in the shadow. And also by having it a little bit dark where the edges are meeting the petals in front of it, like for instance, this petal is in front of this one, by having it a little darker where these edges are meeting, it gives the impression that it is behind the other one. So I don't mind getting a little bit of that happening there. And that's how we're going to start creating depth. Well, we're still just using one color. We will get other colors going next time and some cooler tones, but I like how we've got a little bit of depth happening already. So let's move on to another petal that's not touching anything. And again, this is going to be a fun one because it's behind this one and this one. So we can help give that impression that it's back there by how we paint it. So get our water on here. I could even use my colored water again. And I'm gonna have to be careful because I know my brush it's very loaded, like the paintbrush one is. I guess I should move that up a bit. Okay, let's drop some of this in, and we'll drop it in kind of all along the edge. Just move this out of the way for myself. Ooh, kind of did a little goofy thing there. Okay, now let's move that around a bit because it's obviously way too heavy and concentrated, but let's let it just flow. I might lift a little bit of it out because it just feels a bit dark, and I don't mind this one being a little dark down here because it's going to end up in the shadow. This one is not really in shadow, so I'm not going to be getting shadow colors on top of this red, so I do want to kind of lift it out a little bit. Just using my clean brush, or just dabbing it off. I should grab another paper towel here. So yes, just getting a little bit of that out with my thirsty brush. If I want to clean my brush, I can do that too, and have a clean thirsty brush to lift a bit. But I do like the fact I've created a bit of a sense of depth by having it darker back there than it is in the petal in front of it. So now that we've done that one, we have to find another petal that's not touching any other wet ones. And this one right here actually is not touching anything. So we can go ahead and do it. Ooh, I feel like I might have gone over the line with the water. I'll have to see. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to rinse my brush a little bit, take a little bit of the paint out because I just feel like it's really overpowering. Let's go back in here. And so again, this one is, we can create some depth because we don't want to darken this edge. This edge is in front of this one. So we want to keep this one with the darker edge where the edges are meeting. But in here, we can definitely darken it because there's petals that are in front of it. And so we can give the impression it's behind with how we do this. And I'm gonna move it around with some clear water. Oof. Sometimes you get surprises, and I don't mind a little bit of that. I just want to make sure I don't get excessive pink up here. But I've left a little tiny bit of white there, and I don't know, I might just very gently let that touch the water. Okay, I think I'm going to let that petal kind of be this way because there is an interesting shadow shape I'm going to be getting later with the cool colors. So let's just leave that. I'll lift it a little there. Okay, So where can we go next? Let's do this one here. This is kind of just an interesting little wrap around little petal that's in here. This one I'm going to leave, I think, maybe as pink as it is, and I'm going to come in here and get a bit darker. This is where I can have concentrated paint, because this shape in here actually is quite a lot darker than the others. Let's move that around a bit. Okay, that's where you would like a nice sharp tip on your brush. This one, actually, the way I've got it, it's almost like it's flattened on one side. It's just the way that sometimes you can actually shape your brush by the way that you rub it off on the edge of your palette, and so you can see I've shaped it sort of where it's like that. So that's something you can always keep in mind when you need a sharp tip on your brush. And it is a thing too where obviously newer brushes tend to have a better tip than, once they've been used a lot, then they tend to work better for your, say, using in your water, less for your detailed painting. I'm just noticing that one's kind of bleeding out a little bit right there, but we'll see. We'll just leave it. I won't touch it right now. Let's go in the center here. And I'm just going to drop this in here. Now what I've done is I put more pink, kind of where the flower or where the petal would be closer to the base or the center of the flower. It can be darker, and then just use water to kind of let it just gently fade as it comes closer to the, say, the outside of that petal. Wetting this one, and this is where I'm going to just darken in this one side of it. I'll come back and do more detail on this section later. I could have even just wet this one side. That's okay. I'll just leave it like this. I want the paint to be kind of more towards this side here, because this petal, sometimes it's hard to tell, well, where when it's all like, it almost seems like a tangled mess, but this is where having a reference photo is helpful. Okay, I'm just trying to see if there's anywhere else I can go where I'm not going to be touching anything that's wet. I think most of this is going to be touching something that's wet. This one's not here. I could work on it. This is a very light petal though, so I don't want to do too much to it. I'll just put a little bit of dark at the base, which is fine. It kind of can carry on. Yes, it's pretty much touching this, but that's okay because most of it's not. So I'll just put a little bit of dark there, and then I'll go maybe visit our buds quick, and then I'll have to grab the hairdryer. Now, rather than filling the whole bud with water first, I'm just going to drop some water kind of between the little creases and lines that are within the bud. So I'll just put the water in between, and then I'll come back with my red, rose, whatever, and just do these little lines. Trying to create a little bit more drama in those little creases of in the folds of the little bud. Buds are always kind of interesting, and I'm not going to worry as much about as much detail in the bud. They can kind of be a little bit in the background anyways. So call that one good for now. I'll try and go over and grab a little bit of detail here. Okay, I'm going to call that. I'm just going to gently soften that with the water, and then I will grab the hairdryer and be back. Let's go ahead and do this top petal, and I might try and, okay, I'm just gonna get the water on it so it's wet, and then I might grab a brush. Let's see if I can do it with this. I can always, okay, I was gonna say just kind of gently rub that where I kind of had things go over the line there. wouldn't be the end of the world. Like if it's out of the line, it's not the end of the world, but sometimes you can just gently massage it out with a wet brush. And it seems like it worked okay there. So I'm going to go ahead and just darken again where the edges are meeting, which means along here and along here. I want to keep this area lighter along this edge because I want this one to look like it's behind, right? So I'll probably even do that a little bit. I'll try and lighten that edge over on the other side too. I'm actually kind of covering a little, trying to use my paintbrush and maybe try and cover the pencil lines a little bit when I can with that dark. So it's a little bit over the edge in some spots, just a little bit, but you can't see it too much because, again, I'm using a dark enough color that I can get away with doing that. Just come up to the edge there. And I might lift just a tiny little bit of this paint and just drag it down as well. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. It actually can be a little darker in that spot because I can push it. I'm changing the shape of this leaf or petal a smidgen bit. I'm coming in a little bit more with my paint. I'm hoping I can cover that pencil line okay. I kind of like that shape a bit better. Okay, let's just leave it like that. Maybe put a little bit of water to blend it out, but okay. Let's move on. Let's do this other big, well, do you want to do the big one? Maybe we should work in here so that we don't like dragging our hand into where we've already wet it. So let's go right, I guess we have to go into here because this one's touching this one, this one's touching this one. So yeah, we've got to go into here a little bit. And this shape does get quite a bit darker, so I'm going to try and get extra paint on my brush. See if I can achieve that depth in this particular petal. I might have to always, you can always, the other thing we can do is mix up a little more concentrated paint if we need to. But we might not need to. I want it to get darker closest to this side here. Sometimes I'll tip my brush and try and encourage the paint to go the way I want it to go. And then I'm just going to use a wet brush and fade it out this way. A little darker than that, but so you can see that it's kind of the same principles for the most part, where it's like lighter at the tops of the petals or where the petals kind of get closer to the outside edges, and then darker as they kind of come deeper into the petal. So it's not complicated, it's just sometimes time consuming to just deal with all these tiny little shapes. Ooh, I'm kind of messing up a little bit there. Okay, we'll just call that good enough there. Let's see where else we can go. We could work on this one here. I've got a little bit of kind of paint on there, but for the most part, I just want to wet it and then get the paint darker with this brush. And dab a little bit of this off on my brush. Just gonna lift a little bit here because I'm losing my variation or my gradation within my color, as in like gradation as it kind of gradually goes from light to dark. I want it to just do that gradually, and I want to really emphasize the darks in this corner because it gets deep and dark down here, and then it kind of lightens. So I might go and mix my paint again. It's interesting, but this apparently this rose is, I've got enough of the rose in here that it's sinking in my puddle of paint, and so when I stir it I feel like I'm getting darker colors. So That can happen. I found it more, I haven't found it as much with the rose paint, but it's definitely doing it in that mixture there. Okay, I'm trying to figure out, I think I can do this little piece here. Yes, I think I can do it. Or can I? Yes. I had to feel there for a minute. Which one was wet? Again, I'm trying to get as dark as I can with this particular pigment. We will be pushing some of our shadows a little darker with our cool colors, but I want to try and, ooh, I just went over the line. I want to push them as much as I can first with this. So you can already see how we're achieving quite a lot of depth with just one color, and we're kind of, like I say, in some ways this is monochromatic. It's not quite, because we do have that yellow in there. So it's not all the pink, but for the most part, we're just sticking with the one color today. I think part of the problem is I'm just too wet. And sometimes when that happens, the best thing to do is to squeeze the ferrule of your brush. The ferrule is here. And so when you squeeze the bristles, rather, that are close to the ferrule of the brush, you can sometimes get more water out, and more pigment can sometimes stay at the tip of your brush. Obviously, there's quite a lot of pigment in this in general, so we'll see how well that worked. Let's just try and grab some of this drier paint and see if I can get me dark enough. Like I said, we'll get darker still with cooler colors, but I'm just going to leave that be for now because it's kind of bleeding into the shape beside it. I might come give it a second layer. Okay, technically there is an area here that I should be able to fill in. I know it's touching that. It really, I kind of went a little bit out of the lines there, so I'll have to clean that up after. But this section here is quite dark, so I'm just putting some of our paint in there, and then I'm going to blend it around with water. Okay, we can actually work into this dark section here. This is where we're going to end up having, this is one of the darker parts of the flower, even though it's got that yellow undertone. We can work on that because it's not touching anything that's wet. So let's go in here and wet this, and then start to apply our beautiful red color. Now, as you can see, it looks very orange right now, doesn't it? And that's because there's so much yellow under there that when we get the red on top, it's just not covering it completely. So I'm going to drop a little heavier amount of this color on here. And then after that, I will go and grab possibly even just some quinacridone rose by itself to get it a little bit richer and darker. I want this section here to get a bit lighter, so I'm going to try and just lift a little bit of the paint, and I might be able to lift a bit of the yellow and the red together, and then I'll come in with some more of the quinacridone rose in a minute. But I just want to try and lift a little bit because I want this side of the flower where more of the light is hitting to end up a little bit lighter than what I've got. So again, you can see I'm kind of washing my brush, drying my brush, and lifting. Okay, then I'm going to come in and I'm going to just take a little dip into our quinacridone rose. So this one has really, we're not really getting any of our yellows in here now, but we do have a lot of quinacridone rose in this one, don't we? But this one is just going to give us even more of that rosy color. And I'm just going to drop it where I want things to be even darker. Whoops. So I want it to be darker right there, and a little bit down here, and just maybe along the bottom. what, I'm going to put a tiny bit up here as well. And then I'm going to drop a tiny bit of water in it and just let it kind of move that rose color around a little bit for us. And hopefully we'll get a little bit more of a pinky look, because I feel like maybe I overdid that yellow, but that's better. I'm thinking I like that. Let's drop a little bit more rose now into here, just a smidgen. So we did start working slightly cooler by doing that. Partly we were just trying to balance out the yellow that was there, but we also, to do that, I'll just grab the color wheel here. You can see we were kind of working closer into here, and we kind of dropped a bit for our shadows. We didn't do anything too radical because we are working with a lot of this color already, but because we had so much yellow underneath, we needed more of it to cover. And as well, when we get into our darkest shadows, we'll also need more of that. So I think we could add a tiny bit of detail if we want to the buds. Otherwise, we're back to the situation where everything's kind of wet. So we need to dry it before we can carry on with the rest of our shapes. So I'm just going to drop a little bit. Actually, let's get a little bit more of this. You know what? I actually don't even mind if I get a little bit more of the quinacridone rose up here, just because we did get quite a bit of yellow in our buds already. I'm just actually applying this pretty much straight, and then I'll just use a wet brush and drag things around. I should say more of a damp brush. You don't want to be sopping wet for this part. Okay, let's go grab that hair dryer. One shape that's kind of bothering me is just the way that's kind of feels like it's like almost bulging outside where it's supposed to be. I'm going to take, again, this cheap brush that I'll use sometimes for wiping off splatters and whatever. Honestly, it's just a cheap brush from Michael's. Came in a huge set with a bunch of other brushes. It's a nice brush. It's soft, like it's still synthetic, and it's a nice soft brush, but it's a little firmer than, say, these. And I find that this shape, for whatever reason, works well for rubbing things out. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that right here. So I'm just going to use a clean brush and just kind of go back and forth so that I can almost create that, bring that little folded leaf back here. There we go. That's better. Just pushing this back into its place, kind of, because I went a little bit over with it. So I'm happier now. I'm going to leave that be. So because that's wet, I can't touch the shapes that are touching that, but I can carry on with whatever else. And like everything else is dry. So let's do this shape because it's calling out to be done. So water, and then let's move these brushes. Grab some of our nice dark color here and drop this in. We almost could have a slightly bit of our orangey color in some of these shapes, I'm noticing. I might even do that. I might even drag a little bit more of this orange color that we had at the top, just to harmonize things, because I feel like this ended up quite a bit more orange, so I'll just drop a tiny bit of the orange in with our red orange, whatever we're calling this color, our warm pink. Using a fairly dry brush to just kind of control where that paint is moving. There's going to be details on this one, again, that are done with the cool tone colors. So let's see, I think I can go a little bit darker. Drop just a tiny bit more of our rose, our warm rose. The way that this particular flower is, it seems like that color kind of comes to almost an abrupt stop. It doesn't fade out as much, so I'm trying to kind of control it as I'm dropping it in, but that's okay. I don't mind that. Let's go do the one over here now, because it's got the same sort of idea. The shadow is kind of just going to be behind here, but it's pretty strong as well. Now, yes, these two shapes are touching, but for now, I'm just not going to put much water there because this almost cuts the two shapes apart. So because they're far enough apart and I'm going to be painting here, I think I can get away with this. We'll see if this works. Yeah, I'm liking that. I'm just going to move that, kind of clean up this section here, lift it a bit. Probably just kind of monitor that as it's kind of drying, it's flowing around, but I'm mostly happy with that edge, so I'm just going to leave it be. I'm going to come in the center here and darken some of these shapes. In this case, I'm just doing a hard edge along here. So I just went straight in there with the paint. And I think I'm going to do that again right here because there's some shapes that have these shadows, but the shadows are not super soft edged. So I'll just blend this one a little bit with the water. I think that back one might be okay. Let's see. I know the shapes are almost touching again. Maybe they are touching, but I think we're going to be okay because we are working in very small shapes and I left this one kind of unblended. Let's go up here and just drag a bit of that color up. Now this shape here isn't, like this shape here is not too wet. We're working pretty damp, so I can work into this one, I think. So I'm going to do that because it has a very dark section in it where it meets the edge of this one. And I might even let the two shapes flow together, we'll see. That's concentrated. Just tipping my paper to kind of direct it, go in there. I want it to kind of come up to the edge of here, and it came across the edge and go into here because this shape is one of our darkest shapes in the whole thing. So let's encourage it that way. And then, so as you can see, I'm definitely directing it, by the way, I'm holding my page there, trying to let it kind of pour down, and I'm going to just lift this a bit because it's kind of interesting the way the shape of the shadow is in here. It's very, very dark and intense, but this section here is not. So I'm trying to kind of just control the paint. I could almost just go with a hard edge there, and maybe that's what I'll end up doing, is just once this is dry, do something to just get it nice hard edge instead of trying to have a soft edge, because I'm definitely having it flowing more than I want it to. And I'll just soften that edge with the water. Now when that's really still coming, what I might do is grab a paper towel, just grab a little piece, and we'll just do that, and it will dry things up and hopefully stop the movement. I probably just need to do this with a, wait till it's dry, not do the wet thing that I just did. And we'll darken that a little bit with a little bit more control. So just dabbing, never ever rub with a paper towel. We'll wait for that to dry, and then we'll get better detail and sharper shadows and stuff happening there, because yeah, obviously I have to have harder edges. Let's see where else I can work. There's a little shadow here. I might as well do it because this, you know what, this edge is pretty dry. I could work on this section here. Could I? Well, yeah, seems like it is pretty dry right there. This edge here isn't wet enough to be too worried. I felt it, so we'll just go ahead and do this shape quick. And this is another light shape that we actually haven't really done. The darkest section of this shape will be kind of down here. It kind of tucks underneath the petal in front of it. Ooh. So get some of that color in there. We're going to get that more defined as well when we have our future colors on here, but let's just go ahead and let this move around. I'm going to actually let this one have a little bit of texture because I do like the movement that's happening in this one. I'm actually even going to let a little bit of it come onto the shape here because it's the same color. So. Okay, let's control this with our damp brush. Just lift that a little bit with clean water. Don't want to have an overpowering pink in this petal. It's one of our front petals. I want the petals behind it to kind of be back, and we can push this petal back either with pink or with our cool colors later, but let's try and move that paint around. I don't want it to look too contrived, but maybe that's good enough. I don't know. I think that's enough pink. I want to have enough pink, but I don't want to overpower it because I do want this to be a lighter petal. Let's do that. I like how that just moved, so we're going to let that just do its thing, I think. I'll stop it maybe about here. Okay. Where can we work that's dry? We could come here. Yeah, we can do this petal here. So it kind of wraps all the way around here. Just be really careful. We're going to darken it where it, I'm going to dab that off. Darken it where the edges meet. Just getting a teeny bit of paint on here. And put a little bit on here. Now this section here is a very beautiful light. It can be a very beautiful light kind of curled petal, so I don't want to overdo the pink. I think that's good. I like that. I might put a little bit more in the top. Just along here. Water just to gently soften it. Okay, no more touching, Jessica. We're pretty dry in the middle, so I think I can come in with another layer of our dark colors. We can see if we can get enough dark with this. Like I say, in this shape, I might go grab that quinacridone rose again because I really want some of these shapes to get a bit darker. And I don't want to go into our blues yet. We're going to keep that for next time. So I just want to show you how much depth we can achieve without pulling the blue into the picture. And then next time we will pull some blue into the picture and get our cools working. But it's always nice to kind of let your warm colors be on there first and get the value you can achieve with those colors before you start putting the blue. Because sometimes once the blue gets on, that's where you can start getting mud happening, because then when you start getting the yellow and the blue and the red all mixing together, you just have to be a little bit more careful and controlled with what you do. So that's why we're going to just try and get as far as we can without our blues, and then we will add our blues. I'm throwing a tiny bit of quinacridone rose at the base of this, darken it a little bit. I think I'm going to do that in this shape here too, because it's needing to be pushed darker. To the base, I'm going to change that shape a little bit. I don't like the sharp angle there. There we go. Happier with that. Well, I've got this super duper dark color on here. I'm going to go in here and create a little bit of the really dark details in the center of this flower. Kind of curls a little bit. Shapes are kind of interesting. And I want to be careful I don't touch wet paint, obviously, because this would really, if it hits wet paint, we'll have some interesting things happen. So. do a little bit of our shadow on this shape as well. Just be very careful as I soften the edge that I don't touch that middle piece. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it like that. Let's go down here and just do this teeny weeny little shape in here because it needs a bit of color. It's in the shadows, so we will be definitely getting darker shadows happening when we're using our cool colors, but we never got any of our pink on here yet. So that's actually pretty warm. Let's stir that up because I think the pink is sinking in there in that mixture of ours. At least in my palette it is. Seem to be sinking. Okay, that might be a bit deep. Let's lift a little bit of it out because like I say, I'm going to be getting some cool colors in here, so I don't have to achieve all of the depth with the rose, but I want to achieve more of it than I've got. So I'm just going to add a few details into our buds again. Okay, what I think I'm going to do, because you can probably tell there's definitely some wet spaces on here. I'm going to dry this, then I'll come back in and just try and get a teeny weeny little bit more depth with our reds. And that will be the end of our warm colors. So I will be back. Okay, I want to add a little bit of pink to this one petal. It's a very light petal, but I don't want it to be stark white the whole way. So I'm going to be putting a little bit underneath here because again, this is probably casting a little shadow. Now that's a lot of paint on my brush there. I'm going to cast a little shadow on this one, so it's going to have a little bit of color, but I'll just blend that out. Don't want it to be too intense. I like that, I think. Just dab it a little bit with water. Okay. Maybe a smidgen more. I don't know. It just seems like it could have a little bit more of this red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working with fairly concentrated paint now and just push a few of these shadows a bit darker. So I'll probably mostly work with my warm pink, but sometimes I'll come in and just grab a little bit of this quinacridone rose if I feel I need to go just a little bit darker. This will allow me to just go a smidgen darker. And then I can, because I'm working fairly dry now to get these deep shadows in, I can probably just use a damp brush, blend them out, and I may be able to kind of work with shapes that are, I might be able to get away with shapes that are fairly close to each other because I might not be wetting them up to the edges. We'll see. I'll have to make that decision as I go along. I'm going to push that with a little bit of quinacridone. I'm going to go along the bottom edge of this. This could do with a little bit more dark. Put a little touch of dark in here and in here. Again, I'm partly thinking too, the left side of this flower is more the shaded side. So that's what's allowing us to go a little bit darker in the left side of these two shapes here. Just blend them out with some water. Might even throw a little bit more of that. Let's go put a little bit of quinacridone rose in those shapes. Again, this is very detailed persnickety stuff, which isn't for everybody. It tends to give you a very detailed, realistic look if that's what you like. But I don't know, sometimes I like that, and sometimes I actually do like the looser looks. So sometimes I'll work with these tiny shapes, and sometimes I try not to be too detailed when I get these small spots. But Put a little bit of pink in there. And when I say pink, that was actually more just quinacridone rose. Now I don't want to do too much here because remember I just wet that petal not too long ago, so I want to be pretty careful that I don't touch it. I'll go close but not touch, and then when I'm fully dry, I do want to come in here and work that shape a little bit because it's not quite done. I can definitely put some rose across the bottom of this though. Actually, you know what? I'm going to bring a new shape there, just change that a little bit. Okay. A little more pink here. Where else shall we go? Maybe a tiny bit here. As you can see, I'm working pretty dry. I've got pretty much a damp brush and I've got a damp brush, but the paintbrush is pretty dry as well. It's just got pretty thick concentrated paint. Just throwing a little bit down here and push a little bit to the shape a bit more. That one's already wet, so I don't think I'm gonna have to do too much to it. Maybe pull it down a little bit. We'll see. I won't touch it because I think I want it to go kind of that way. And pull it a little bit down. This is where it gets a little bit whatever. The other place I could go is just put a teeny bit of this shadow color in here. And a little teeny weeny bit there. I'm barely even blending those, but I want to blend them a little. Again, these are such tiny little shapes. We're just being super persnickety, but I want to show you how much depth we can create by getting our darks in. And well, we're still just working with these warm colors. And then, yes, we can definitely pull more depth even still once we get our cool colors going next time. So I'm wondering if I want to push this shape right here a little bit further, like if I split this, make it like 2 petals. I don't want to do anything too crazy here though. I do want to come in here and in here, so I could do this shape, I think, but this one I definitely need to let it, I need to get this a little drier, so I'll have to dry that, but I can do in here quick, and then I'll have to use the hairdryer probably one more time just so that I can do that one shape, but sometimes that's the way it is. For one shape, you need the hairdryer. Okay, I'm mixing a mixture of the quinacridone red, or quinacridone rose rather, and a little bit of our warm rose or warm pink, whatever we're calling that. I'm just going to blend this, soften this edge a little teeny bit. Okay. We could push the shape back behind this one a little bit, do a little bit of inventing here, but this is getting to be pretty persnickety. I don't know if it's worth y'all doing this or not. Ooh. Let's see if we can kind of smooth that out. I wanted to darken it, but I didn't quite want to quite so dramatic. Okay, I'm going to dry it one more time. Okay, this is where I'm coming in and I'm going to deepen this shape, but I'm not going to wet it as crazy as I did last time, so hopefully I will get it to work the way I want it to. I might even grab a little bit more of the quinacridone so that I've got it kind of just a nice rich color. And try and work my way around there, and ooh, try and get a position that I'm happy with here. Okay, now I'm gonna just fade it out up here. So I am gonna put water up here. Just gonna wet it, let that flow upwards. There will be some other shadows happening on top of this, so much happier with that now. Much, much, much. Okay. I might even drag that color. Well, no, I'm gonna put a tiny bit of the rose in here, a little bit more. A combination of these two. Like I say, this section here tends to be a very rich dark corner of this flower. Okay, we are getting there. And you know what? This shape here, I'm going to push it back a little bit. Don't want too much paint here. There we go. Just to kind of, I don't know, the shape was kind of bugging me a little bit. Might even do that on this one too. Make it look like the ends of those are just kind of going behind this one in front. I also want to add a little more pink to this one, so I definitely want to push those behind it because they are behind it. And let me see. I'm being very persnickety right now, but wanting to see if there's any other shapes I want to, you know what I want to do is just put a little bit of light pink on some of those center shapes that aren't quite done. So I'm going to try and get more of a watery color and just go on top of this. And maybe a little bit more on this one. Okay, I don't want it quite that dark. Let's smooth it out with water. I'm going to even just put a little bit here too, because I just feel like the center needs to be fairly dark. I still like some variety in the middle, but it just seemed like some of those shapes were so white they were sticking out like a sore thumb. So sometimes you just have to go in at the end and, oh, and this one too needs a little bit of dark. I can actually add a little more paint to my brush probably to get it darker. And I'll just fade it out. And I know I'm really kind of getting into this touching other shapes situation, but I'm thinking because I'm pretty dry, I might get away with it. When you're really wet and flowy, that's when the paint really runs. But you have to be careful because anytime there's moisture in the works, it can run. Okay, I'm noticing this is kind of coming with a funnier hard edge. I'm not sure. That's not terrible, but I'm not sure if I quite like that. So I'm just going to soften this a little bit with some water. I think this is dry enough. We can just, the shapes around it are dry enough. We can put a tiny bit of this pink on here. So like I say, I don't want much, but it just seems almost too anemic. Maybe like that. Maybe lift a little bit of it. I don't know. I feel like it was too white. I'm gonna put some down at this end. Oof. Okay, that was a lot of water. I'm just gonna create a little bit more texture in this one. It seems like that texture that I had. Whoa, not so much paint. The texture I had here kind of as it dried, it just sort of continued to fade out, probably because I had so much water on it or something. So I want to just add a tiny little bit more texture. with my pink. Like I say, most of this isn't really about creating texture. It's really more about focusing on the values by, working on getting them, the values to be the deepest and the darkest kind of towards the center of the flower, and where there's more pigment within the flower, as well as the shadows. We're going to emphasize the shadows with cool colors next time. But you can definitely see, even without the cool colors, we were able to achieve quite a lot of depth by darkening the edges of the petals that are behind another petal. So we got that happening in several places. We're definitely still going to get more of that happening once we get our cool colors on. We also have a teeny little bit of cooler red or cooler rose in a few places where we wanted to push things just a little bit darker, so you can start to see that happening. And then next time we will get our cool colors and our rose itself will be done. Thanks so much for joining me today as we discussed how to create more depth in your paintings by creating light values and dark values within your warm color palette. We also discussed how to lay down your warm colors first and work your way into cooler colors. I can't wait to add our shadows next time and our darkest values as we work with the cool color pigments that are yet to come. I hope this tutorial has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, that it will bless whoever you share it with, and that it has inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.